In the summer of 2002, I had just graduated college. I had no job, I lived with my mom, and I had a degree in mechanical engineering, a field I didn't like. Basically, I was just in it for the money, so this wasn't the best time of my life. My mind typically drifted from what I wanted to do with my life and just trying to stay alive. Now, my younger brother Eugene, or Gene as I called him, was also staying with my mom at the time. And I admit I did have a little bit of fun watching TV and playing video games with them. It helped to pass the time while staying focused on something other than my problems. Part of the TV watching included anime, or animated shows from Japan. Gene loved anime. I never really got into it. Both of us had grown up on Bugs Bunny, Disney, Hanna-Barbera, stuff like that, but that's where cartoons stopped for me. Gene, on the other hand, had friends who helped him branch off into imported shows directly from Japan, and they ate that stuff up. It was one series after another, but one of these series was a show that would change my life. It was a sci-fi war epic called Mobile Suit Gundam. Gene kept telling me, "You've got to watch this," but I wasn't convinced. Cartoons were just cartoons for me. I mean, they were cool and all, but they were just shows like any other. But after a couple of weeks of constant prodding, I finally caved in and willingly watched anime for the first time. Now, Mobile Suit Gundam is what I call vintage anime. It was produced in 1979 and you could tell it was old. It had this somewhat grainy footage and the animation was somewhat herky-jerky. But what stood out to me was the drama, the deep character development, the complicated story. It was real, like characters actually were killed and never came back to life like they do in comic books or soap operas. There was blood, violent explosions. My first thought was, this is a cartoon? I told Gene, this is great, are there any others like this? After he laughed in my face, he told me that Gundam is a franchise with tons of different stories from back in '79 to now. No joke, during this one summer, and a little into fall, I watched 13 different Gundam series for a total of 364 episodes of anime goodness, each one around 25 minutes each. Anyway, during this process, something awakened in me. The artist, the writer. I'd had a passion to create for a long time. I wrote my first short story in 4th grade. My 8th grade teacher said I should think about becoming a writer. On my SATs, I always scored much higher on my verbal scores than on my math scores. But I kept telling myself, you've got to make money. How else could I survive? So I got into a lucrative major that I had little interest in. But now I felt that fire once again. The drive to write, to create, seeped back into my mind. And it grew and festered with each Gundam episode I watched to the point where I physically felt agitated. I had to write immediately. So for the first time in my life, I stopped what I was doing, which was basically nothing, sat down at my mom's computer and wrote the outline of the novel that had formed in my head. Later that year, I went back to school. I took some creative writing classes, and I even thought of getting a degree in English. But of course, I told myself to start making money, so I quit and went into the workforce. Years later, I started writing again. But then I started working 2 jobs, 60 hours a week for 6 years, and I gave up on writing again. This pattern continued over and over to the present day, where I find myself with no job, living with my brother. Sound familiar? So finally, over 20 years later, I've decided to give it one more shot. I've enrolled here at WSU Tri-Cities looking for a degree in English. I'm not sure what will happen. Maybe I'll finally become a writer, maybe not. But one thing's for sure, I know who I am. For better or for worse, I'm a writer. I've always been a writer, and I always will be.